We are Canberra Multicultural Service FM 91.1, where every culture finds its voice. Canberra's only full-time multicultural radio station. You can listen to us online at cmsradio.org.au or tune into 91.1 on FM in your car, at home, anywhere. To broadcast or volunteer with us, give us a call at 6287 7058.
Okay, welcome to Hello Canberra. This is CMS 91.1, and this is where we are every Friday live from 5 to 6. If you're watching us or you're listening to us, it's 91.1. 5 to 6, the drive show. And you can actually call us at call our studio at 0262874347, and also you can comment us in the Facebook page if you're listening to us. We will be talking to a fantastic guest today, and we'll also be talking about the local news. There's not much to say this week because there hasn't been much of a much of news in the in Canberra, but there was a really bad weather which really affected a lot of people. I hope everyone's safe. Everyone's houses are safe. My house started leaking somewhere in the roof, so there has been stuff around. If you've been affected, you can also talk to us about that as well. Actually, because we spoke about the 3% transportation, the price rise in the 3% in the public transportation last week, there is a follow-up this week where the Transportation Minister, Chris Steele, has come back and has said, not to us, but then there's a story where they're pulling off the electric, 4 electric buses off the fleet, and apparently the us as the taxpayers are not paying for it because those buses are leased, so they're pulling it off. They're sending it back to Sydney, where it came from, for repair. So those are the electric buses, and that's the news for now for Canberra. Now, before we, there has been other news as well, but those are news of people, few people dying. There was one person that lost their life during the really harsh weather situation a day ago. There has been incident, someone from Uruguay that lost her life while cycling and was hit by a car which was speeding as well. So those are the stories this week. Federal elections on the way. Mid-May, we'll be talking about that. And next episodes, we'll be having heaps of discussions about federal elections and what and how to choose your right MPs and senators as well. We have a very, very special guest, special for me as well. And we have a guest that has been in Canberra for over 40 years, I think, over 50 years. He's not from Canberra. He's come to Canberra as I have come to Canberra. But he is an Australian, born and bred Australian, but has come to Canberra from somewhere else. And he's made his life, he's made his luck in Canberra. He was one of the first people to drive Lamborghini in Canberra. Most of you, if you're watching me or you're listening to me, probably have already met him or know him. He was a motor car racer. This guest that I have in front of me, I have a lot to say about him. He's an Australian motor car racer champion from 1970 to 1990s. He's also Australian pilot racing champion. Also, he was top 10 at Bathurst. 1,000 race, Bathurst 1,000 races, and he's got a lot of life experience. He also owns a business here of selling cars as well, and a fantastic guy. He's made his way up from really a bottom, and he's come down to come up to this point. We have Chris Clarihan today in the studio. Hi, Chris. Thank you for joining us today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Um, it's a pleasure for me to have you here as well, because you're one of the first people that I, not only me, but me and my wife, knew when we first came to Canberra, right? So you're a fantastic human being anyway. So um, let's start from your journey when you started, when you were young, and you were just telling me off air how you worked hard and you've achieved all the things that you've achieved until now. Let's start from the beginning, right? You're not from Canberra, are you?
No, I'm from a country town called Griffith in New South Wales, and I went along there to school, and I did year 12. It wasn't fantastic, I have to admit, but it was a great life experience.
But you were a soccer player, or you, or,
No,
or
I
a
was a
football
rugby
player?
league player.
All right.
I was what they call an elite rugby league player, and I was picked out by the ex-Australian rugby league coach called Don Ferner,
Right.
who offered me a contract to come to Queanbeyan, actually.
Okay. And that's how you came to Canberra, or?
That's how I came to Canberra. I came here to play football with them for the Queanbeyan Blues for a lot of years, and I was able to put my roots down in Queanbeyan and work in Canberra and in Queanbeyan.
So you're just telling me when you first came to Canberra, right? You started. You used to work in 3 jobs, and normally because this is a multicultural radio as well, and there are lots of people who come from overseas, they think that they're the only ones that has to work hard and not the people that those were born and brought up here. Now you give me a completely different story when you say that, right? So you worked 3 jobs when you first came to Canberra.
Yeah, well, I used to work. I'd get up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'd pop over to Fishwick at a place called Comet Transport in about -5, 6 degrees in the mornings. I'd work there unloading semi-trailers until 7 o'clock. Then I'd run home, have a shower, then off to my day job, which was selling cars for Gregory's Ford, and work through until 5 o'clock. And when I finished there, I'd either go to football training, or I'd go to the Queanbeyan Leagues Club and work in the bar there, until about 9:30. So I had 3 jobs back in those days.
And the one thing that's very interesting about you, Chris, is when you say you worked in a bar, right? And you don't drink.
No, I don't drink.
And
I don't smoke.
And you
No,
don't smoke.
don't drink, no smoke. No. I'm probably too mean. I'm probably tight with my money. I think you work so hard, or I think the harder you work, the more you look after it.
Now I may be, trying to be, biased here when I say this, but you are one of the only first Australian that I have met that do not drink. Because there is a perception where they say if you don't drink, you don't barbie, and you don't swear, you're not an Australian, right? But but you don't drink.
Yeah, I'm probably a bit different in that way. I'd probably be dead now if I drank. I do some pretty crazy things in my life, and you've got to have your wits about you. Really, I think if you drink and you make wrong decisions when you drink. I like to be in control of me. Maybe I'm just a control freak.
You are you?
I'd have to agree. Everyone tells me I am.
Well, now, coming down to your career, you first came to Canberra. You worked in 3 jobs.
Yeah.
Right? It wasn't easy for you, right? You were just telling me that you came from a very, very humble beginning. Tell me about that life in Griffith.
Well, I was the eldest of 6 children. I learned to work really hard early. I left home. I had a fight with my father. I left home, and
what was the fight? What was the fight about?
Oh, it was just domestic violence, basically, and things like that. And then I went on I got a job actually at 15 years old, working in the hotel, and I was a barman there, and I worked there, 6 nights a week, and I was able to live in the hotel, and all the old ladies and everything all looked after me, did my washing, did my cooking, and they were like another mum. And I worked there for many years. And the crazy thing about it, and I could never, even today, I think about it, I was working probably 6 days a week on casual basis, and I was taking home more money than my father, who worked in a 40-hour job on the PMG with 6 children. I was actually making more money than what he was working from 6:30 to 10 o'clock at night. You know, back in those days, no one wanted to work casual, especially everyone was family orientated. They just couldn't get anyone to work. And I was able, because I was playing football in the first grade in the town, I probably looked a lot older than what I was. So I was able to pick up a job casual.
Yeah.
I remember this is a crazy story, but I remember driving a brand new sports car, a brand new Austin Illy Sprite to school back in those days, and the teachers were dumbfounded. They just couldn't believe that someone could drive a brand new sports car. And but the money I was making at the time was just absolutely fantastic.
So you were making the money from the hotel?
Yeah, I was making the money. Well, as I said, no one back in those days, you know, the culture was that guys went home. They'd go and have a drink at the pub between 5 and 7 o'clock, and then they'd all go home. The hotel would nearly empty out, except for the odd guys. And most guys, they were very back in those days, they were very family orientated. So they all went home to their families.
Now tell me this. So from Griffith to Canberra.
Yeah.
What brought you to Canberra? Like, how did you come to Canberra?
Well, I was really lucky. I played in a football side called the University Shield. And the University Shield was the top high schools in New South Wales.
Mm-hmm. And
the first time Griffith had entered, we won it. And I was lucky enough to have Don Ferner, who was ex-Raiders coach, sitting on the sideline being a talent scout. And he grabbed hold of me and took me to Canberra. And that's where I've been ever since.
Wow, you've got a great story. There's so much to listen to you. If you're listening to us, it's CMS 91.1, 5 to 6, we are live. If you're watching us, you can comment us. He's a great entrepreneur, great business person as well. So if you have any questions as well from the business perspective, you can also comment and ask. Now coming to your career as your motor racing, you have plenty of hats on, right? Now, you're a motor racer. You also fly planes, and you are a plane racer as well. And you fly helicopters.
Yes.
You restore cars.
Yes.
You sell cars.
Yes.
Right. So, like, what don't you do? You are a business person, you know, and what don't you do then? Like, you know, you don't cook probably, but
well, it goes back to when I worked in Griffith. You know, when I lived in Griffith, I had I remember flying to a place called Mildura back in the probably the early, even 50s and late 50s, early 60s. I was able to go to South Australia, who my auntie paid for the airfare because we were too poor in those days. And I can still remember flying along in a DC-3, and the air hostess got me and took me up into the cockpit. And I was that excited. I never really ever got over it. And as I got to 13 and 14, I just had that passion for flying. I knew what I wanted to do, and I had to do something about it. So I used to walk about 5 mile back in those days to the airport and watch all the planes. And one day I got talking to the guys at the Aero Club, and they saw the excitement in my eyes and the time I took to walk there and hang around all weekend, you know, looking at aeroplanes. So then they offered me a job in lieu of flying training. I would wash the planes, I would fuel them, I would check the oil and keep an eye on them and do all the logbooks and all the rest of it in lieu of an hour's flying. And back in those days, it was so expensive, an average guy couldn't afford an hour's flying. So I started doing then, and then they approached me and they said, look, we've got an instructor here who's got to fly up to another place called Hillston, which is about an hour away. So I talked to my school teacher, and he said, well, you're not doing any good at school here. You may as well go and, you know, follow your passion. So I used to fly with my instructor from Griffith up to Hillston and back every Friday afternoon. And the funny thing about it, I would take off and he'd keep an eye on me and he'd say, "Sons, see that fence there? You'll come to that fence in about another hour. When you get there, wake me up." And he was an ex-World War fighter pilot. So as soon as we took off, he went to sleep. When I got there, I had to tap him on the shoulder and then we'd land the plane. He'd do all his instructing and then we'd fly back home. Same thing. See that fence there, son? When you get back there, there'll be Griffith. If you continue to follow that, he said, "Wake me up when we're ready to land." And I got so much flying. You know, people really took an interest in me. It was exciting. I don't think many people back then saw many young people get involved in aviation. Number one, they couldn't afford it. But for someone to come along, they felt so fantastic.
So this experience of yours tells me that if someone's really interested and put the wheel into it, money is just secondary.
That's correct.
All right. So you can just do things, and you've proven it, right?
If you want to do it, you can do it.
So you can't just sit down in your couch and say, "Hey, I don't have money. I'm not going to do that." If you have the passion, you can really do it.
There's always a way around it.
Yeah.
You know, and one of the ways around it for me was washing and cleaning aeroplanes and fueling them because they didn't want to do it. So it was an advantage to them and it was an advantage to me.
You've really worked hard, haven't you? So how many planes do you have today in your farm?
I've got quite a few aeroplanes. I'm really big into gliders.
Yeah.
And I'm just restoring a jet glider at the moment. And that's another story. You know, that's another crazy story.
Tell me about this.
Many, many years ago, back in the 80s, I went to the Canberra Showground asset, and it was called Big Boys Toys.
Yep.
And we walked in, and in front of me was this beautiful white Lamborghini Countach. And next to it was a jet glider. And I said to all the boys I was with, "I'm going to have one of those one day." And they all laughed at me and, you know, mates are mates. And we all laughed. And then I had the opportunity later in life to buy a white Lamborghini Countach. I think it was the only one in Canberra.
Yeah.
We've
always got,
it was terrific. It was a terrific car, and there wasn't many in Australia, but I managed to, again, working 3 jobs.
Yeah.
I managed to...
3 jobs again?
Yeah, 3 jobs again. And I managed to afford it. And so I bought it. And then about 7 years ago or 6 years ago, I started inquiring about this jet glider I'd seen back in the 80s. And a guy said to me, "Look, I don't know who owns it, but it's somewhere near Nyngan." I said, "Oh, yeah, really?" And he said, "I can't tell you, but he said it's within 8 kilometres of Nyngan." And he said, "I know there's 4 or 5 roads going into Nyngan, but if you get on the Google Earth," he said, "the glider's in a trailer and you'll see it's about 100 yards off the road." Well, I spent about 2 weeks on Google Earth until I found it. And I went up and found it.
The glider that you saw in 1980,
yeah,
and that has come back to you today.
It's come back to me today,
and it's in your farm right now.
No, it's down in Tokawal, being restored and being airworthy and everything.
Wow! This is a fantastic story, isn't it, Chris?
Yeah.
Like, if you're really getting into things, and if you really want something, you actually get it.
Yeah.
And the funny part of this is you're not forgotten about it.
No, and and it's one of life's experiences. You know, like I remember tracking down the owner.
Yeah.
This is another crazy story. I cracked down the owner, and she wanted some phenomenal amount of money for it.
Oh, wow!
And I just said, "Look, thank you, but I can't afford that." And I said, "Well, why are you selling the glider?" And she said, "Look, my husband's just died. He's from overseas. And she was in a very wealthy situation. She hadn't married him, but she'd been with him for 27 years. And when he died, she couldn't find the money or anything. And his brothers had travelled from America to Australia to contest the will. And she talked about that, and she needed $35,000.
All right.
And she wanted probably 5 times that or 6 times that.
Yeah.
For the glider. But I said, look, I can't afford that, but thank you for, giving me the opportunity and talking. And then I said, well, why do you want the money? She said, look, the barrister wants $35,000.
Wow.
And that was a lot of money back then. And I said, look, I'll tell you what we'll do. I will lend you the $35,000. If you lose the court case, then I lose all my money. But if you win the court case, I get the glider for $35,000. And she agreed. We did all in writing and everything. And she won the case and lived happily ever after.
Oh, that's great.
No, so that was a real gamble in those days.
Oh, wow.
But,
I mean,
you've got to be there having a go, don't you?
Now, see, I've seen you at work. You're a really great negotiator, and you've learned it through the years because I think you learned it while you were very young. How to negotiate and all those kind of stuff. But other than that, I'll come to that. But the major thing about you is the motor car racing, right? Chris Clarihan, people know you for motor car racing, for the championships, for all those years that you've driven. And I'll just, if you're watching right now, or if you're just listening to us, I am going to play a video. You can later on have a look in the Facebook Canberra Multicultural Service. This is a video that I'm
with Racecam as we drop into the Wilco cutting. We'll try and catch up for you and see what has happened here. Coming down.
So
with Racecam.
This again.
With Racecam as we drop into the Wilco cutting. We'll try and catch up for you. And
for some reason, the video is not playing. Anyways, there is a video of you where you you have a collision with other cars in there, and you're in a racetrack. There's 20,000 people there. Like, what was that?
Well, that was one of the. It was a big accident on top of the hill in the cutting at coming down what they call the Dipper in the Bathurst 1000, and it was only about an hour in the race, and a guy in a big Ford Falcon Phase 3 lost his brakes, and he managed to hit me in the side, but as luck would have it, I was able to manoeuvre myself away from it and continue to finish the whole race. And back in those days, the mentality with some motor racing guys, they think they're going to win the Bathurst 1000 in the first half for an hour. They don't realise back then it was like a 10-hour race.
And your Bathurst 1000, you were the top 10. You were in top 10 in Bathurst 1000.
I managed to finish in the top 10 finish in the top 10, which is it's a really good feather in your cap for a privateer. You're running against all the factory tees and the guys that really know what you're doing, and they specialise in that category.
Now let's get back to the basics, right?
Yeah.
How on earth did you get into racing? I mean, a guy from Griffith who likes to fly, goes and washes cars, works in the hotel, right? Has 3 jobs, and all of a sudden, now you're a motor car racer. I mean, and that too a successful one. You're not just a motor car racer, you're a champion. Now, how does that happen?
It's amazing what happens in your life. I was in a situation where I had to run a guy from the airport out to a very, very important meeting, and the aeroplane was late. And he said, mate, just get me there as quick as you can. And we went through an S-bend with a channel running underneath us. And I thought I was, again, back in the sports of running a little Osanili Sprite back in those days. And we must have went through there fairly quickly.
Was this in Canberra?
No, this is in Griffith in New South Wales.
Griffith, okay.
In the country. And when I got back and I waited for him to do his meeting, and then I took him back to the airport, and he said to me, have you ever thought about going motor racing? He said, you've got a natural gift. And I thought, oh, yeah, they just all say that. He's just making me feel good. But when I left football, after a successful career in football, I went to race cars. And the first race I ever turned up to, there was, back in those days, there's 60 and 70,000 people there for the Toby Leasey. I'd never been to a motor racing, and I couldn't believe the crowd and the excitement. And here I am. I bought myself a Bowl Nagari, which is a Australian sports car, and I've turned up to practice, and I've put the car on the front row of the grid. I just couldn't believe it, and I led the whole race, and I won my first ever race.
The first time that you
the first
raced.
time I ever raced.
Now, tell me.
It was just crazy.
How did he get into that? Like, say, somebody told you that you were a great driver.
Yeah.
So how did you make your way to the race course?
I went and bought a car. A guy was going into liquidation. I went and bought a car, and I didn't know much about it, but all I knew it was a very quick car. So I purchased a car off him, and then and back in those days, you had to go and do a course, and you had to be examined and to make sure you were quick enough and that you didn't get in everyone else's day. It was a very elite
course
sport. Back in those days, it was only for the rich. It was only, you had to have a lot of money to go motor racing.
Now, at this point of time, you didn't have money.
No, I didn't have money. I didn't have a lot of money, but I had a very, very fast car. I had a car that the car was probably quicker than the driver.
Now, both things. Now, this is very mind-boggling for me, right? So, first thing, you don't have money, and nobody thinks of flying a car or flying a plane without money, right? And you managed to do that. Now you don't have money, and it was a very rich sport, elite sport, and you still managed to go and do the racing.
Well, what I managed to do was get some guys that had mechanical backgrounds and who were excited about motor racing, and I put them into a team.
Right.
And I made it quite clear from the start that I had never had a lot of money, but they paid all their own way, all their own accommodation, and they went along for the excitement. But the thing is, it got out of hand because we just got better and better, and the cars we bought just got better and better, and it just progressed from there.
So tell me about motor racing, right? When you're in motor racing and you win, and back in the day, if you win a race, did you get a lot of money then, or how does it work?
Well, no, not really. There wasn't a lot of money, and when I started racing aeroplanes, I remember I raced in the Australian twin-engine pylon racing titles down in Tasmania, and I couldn't get over for winning one race weekend. We got more money than Peter Brock got for winning Bathurst. I just couldn't believe it. How long's this been going on? This is incredible.
And what's the amount like? Like when you say more money, what sort of money are you getting? Like when you win a pylon race?
Well, we used to run tyres that were 5 and 6 meetings old, and we'd sleep in the cheapest motel, and we just did everything so cheap. We really ran on a shoestring. But and again, where we would buy the tyres off them, not for much money. For a lot of the guys that were running, the wealthy guys, they'd put tyres on every meeting. We would buy the tyres off them and run them for 5 meetings. So
wow.
We had there was. We all helped each other, and everyone was in it for the same reason, the excitement and, what we got out of it. And we met some wonderful people, the journey. I've still got friends I met, 40, 50 years ago.
Now, we were talking about ADHD as well. So hopefully you're not diagnosed for ADHD the way you go around. That's anyone that knows Chris. He runs around like a headless chook, right?
Yeah.
But that's the way you are, and that's why you've done what you've done, right? But coming back to the motorsport at the moment, one of the championships when you won, there were about 20,000 people in the stadium there, right? That's what it says in my research. There were about 20,000 people when you won. What was the feeling like then when you crossed the line and there's 20,000 people cheering at you, and what was the feeling like at
the
that
feeling's
stage?
Fantastic, and when you went to places like Oran Park and the Toby Lee series, there was about 70,000 people there. I've never seen crowds like it.
Oh, it was 70,000.
Yeah, 60, 70,000 people in the Toby Lee series and everything, and I just couldn't believe it. The probably the only thing I really struggled with was in all the national TV stations all over Australia, they had live TV motor racing. So
Right.
I would race and I'd feature in all the capital cities, but there'd be none in Canberra. And to get sponsorship, it was so hard.
Oh,
It was so hard, and I don't know how many dollars I knocked on, and I had people forthcoming that would help me. I had some wonderful people. I had Bob Keogh, who was a big contractor, earth moving contractor, and then I managed to get Wang Computers. They were fabulous to me, so I was really lucky. But a lot of the money came from from working, and
so you kept working, you kept racing,
you
kept working,
racing,
and kept racing.
And in the end, I had a motor blow up at one particular time. I had a motor blow up in Lakeside in Queensland, and I had a millionaire mate with me, and who was very, very wealthy. And we're driving back home, and I bought Alan Moffat's transport, and we're driving back home, and he said, "Do you know what?" He said, "What it cost you to go there today, do you realise you could go around the world with 2 first-class tickets?" And it really hit me. It was like a thunderbolt. Here I am. I'd never, because I was so involved and so passionate and out of control, you didn't think about the money, And then for someone to say that, and I just went home, sat down, and I put the cars away for a while, and just regrouped and, realised how much money it was costing me.
What experience, huh? What experiences?
But both those cars now I've got now, and I'm just going through, and they're both famous racing cars that have won Australian titles that I own, and they're just being restored, and I've been really looking forward to that. And what's happening now in Australian motor racing, the historic motor racing class has become very, very big. And a lot of people get to the meeting because they remember all the old race cars. It's a little bit like about Goodwood in England and places like that, where they get thousands and thousands of people that just come to watch all the old cars race. And it's growing here in Australia. It's getting
is there more
and bigger.
And probably more money as well, more sponsors and more money in
No, actually,
racing?
there's no sponsorship. No, it's on a different level. It's more, even though they race very, very competitive. Most of the guys that have got these type of cars are very, very wealthy in their own right. It's a passion. It's and it's a fellowship. You go there and you haven't seen a guy for 20 years or 10 years or 40 years, and then you go, and everyone remembers everyone. It's motor racing is a very close knit community.
Now, tell me something. When you talk about motor racing, I do pull up a few of your pictures where you're coming out from a car wreck, right? There is a picture where you're coming out from a car wreck. What was that? Did you? Is it like, we know that motor racing is very risky, and I've seen a video that you just showed me where someone just went off the track as well. But then I've seen you as well in your Facebook where you come out from a car wreck. You said, "I lived this day" or something. What was that? What happened?
Well, yeah, I can't explain it to you, but a lot of guys have had crashes over 300 kilometres an hour. And yes, I've had a couple, and I've been lucky. Yeah, very, very
Not
lucky.
a scratch. Not a scratch.
Not a scratch. I had one bad one where I was in hospital in Melbourne for 6 weeks.
Oh, wow.
That was pretty horrendous. But I don't know. It's a sort of guys that motor race don't have any respect for their life. They really don't. If you had respect or you were scared, you wouldn't do it. Right. And there's 2 categories in motor racing, ones that don't care and ones that care. And, you saw that accident happen there in one of those videos at over 300 kilometres an hour. A good friend of mine never raced again. Guys that have really big accidents never go back.
Well, why is that?
Because it's just so frightening, the experience. It's just, back in the 60s and the 50s and everything, everyone's dying. Today the cars are a lot safer. back then there was no safe. Back when we were racing, you had a roll bar, but the cars were all made out of aluminium, not fiberglass like they are today. And a lot of people died, But again, it was just the passion, like they just...
The adrenaline rush that you get.
It was like a drug to them.
Yeah.
They
to them or to you as well?
Oh, look, it's a drug. It's a drug because you've just got to be there, and it doesn't matter what the consequences are. It doesn't matter how hard you work. You've just got to get there. I can't explain it. And when you win, it's just a fantastic feeling.
When you have 70, 80,000 people cheering you.
Yeah. Back in the old days, it was like that. And but I've been lucky. I've been really, really lucky.
Do you still race? I mean,
well, I'm back. I'm going back racing shortly, and as I said, I'm restored. I've got a couple of famous cars that broke a lot of lap records that still stand today. Going back, to do all this historic racing. It's not so serious, and but it's still fast and still dangerous.
Oh, that's great. Now, coming to your pylon racing. Now, I heard the word pylon, the first time today.
Yeah.
Right, and probably lots of our viewers, whoever will be watching this later on, and whoever is listening to us today, they will know what's a pylon racing, right? Can you explain that to us? Like, what's a pylon racing?
Well, pylon racing is there's a pole sticks out of the ground on a 13-kilometre course, about 100 foot high, and there's 8 to 10 planes fly together around those pylons at about 100 feet.
And that's a race as well, is it?
And it's a race, and I managed when I first went to see it. I saw it in America, and I turned up, and the guy said to me, there'll be two or three people killed here this weekend, and I just went, oh yes.
And can you repeat that again? Two or three people killed.
They race at a place called Reno in America, and there's always someone dying, right? And because the crashes, and they're not like a car. When an aircraft hits the ground, that's the end of it, and they have engine failures and things. And I managed to go over there, and I was educated by a couple of American guys and showed me all the tricks and things like that. And then I returned to Australia, and I was lucky enough to win 2 Australian titles in the twin engine in a Piper Aerostar, which is a really quick aeroplane. And
now tell me something, Chris. You've been a winner, a champion, or racing pylon your life. In business, what does it take? Like, what does it have to be for a person to win? What's the mindset? I'm always like very fascinated with you when I see you and I talk to you, right? So, what is it?
I can't explain it, but if you want to do something bad enough, you can do it. There's never a problem as long as you want to do it. And people have got to believe in themselves. There's so many people with a lot of hidden talents, advantages. I think if you want to do it, you're halfway there. And then you become involved. But there's nothing in life you can't do if you want to do it. As long as you have a really positive attitude. And yes, you'll get your ups, you'll get your downs. I've been up, I've been down. And the thing is, never get too far down, and nothing's ever that bad when you get down. Always remember, nothing is ever that bad. You can think it's bad, but it's not that bad.
It's
really important to...
when you say this, it's
get down. If you ever get down, talk to people, because I believe the chemicals in your brain that people that commit suicide and thing, it's not their fault. It's the chemicals that are released in their brain that make them think like that. Because people that that have committed suicide never think like that. And yet then they commit suicide. And it's all about the chemical imbalance, I believe. I might be wrong, but I believe it's about the chemical imbalance, because normally they wouldn't do it. And things are never that bad. And the other thing, don't worry what people think about you, or what they write about you, because you'll be old news in another week. You'll be in the fishing wrapper and you'll be old news. Always walk with your head up.
You're such an inspiration, like such an inspiration. I mean, it's one of the this I've been doing these episodes for a long time. This is one of the most inspirational episodes I have ever done, and I'd never had a chance to sit down and talk to you the way I'm sitting down today and talking to you, because you're always busy.
Always busy.
Right? And there's so much that I want to learn from you, and I want to take from you, right? Starters, humble beginning, and you've come to Canberra, and you've achieved things, and you've gone down and you've gone up and all this kind of stuff, right? Tell me something, Chris. Let's equate motor racing to life. Like, how can you say, how is life and motor racing, or things that you could learn from motor racing, in your real life?
I think preparation's got a lot to do with it.
So in your,
I really think I know when I came out of motor racing and I went into air racing, I never tell anyone this story, because when you're flying with equal machinery and you want to win, you have to find an advantage somewhere. And I shouldn't tell you this, but I've never shared this with anyone.
right, exclusive.
I would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning at Valleyfield in Tasmania, and I would fly the plane out 50 mile, and I would set up all the perimeters. In other words, the mixtures, very important when you motor race, when you're flying even, to have all your mixtures right to get the optimum performance out of the both motors, and to have the plane trimmed exactly the way you win, the way it goes so fast. And what I would do, I would go out each morning at 5 o'clock and set the plane up. So when I started the race, because what happens, you're at a height of 1,500 feet and you dive to the bottom, and you've got 8, 9 planes, 10 planes around you. And when you're diving to the bottom, you're trying to work out what your propellers have to be tuned equally.
Yeah.
They have to be harmony, both in harmony to get the optimum performance. And you're trying to struggle, and you're looking where you're going. You're looking at the plane left. You're looking right. When you've got it all tuned, and we talked about motor racing when everything is tuned before. When I dived down, I didn't have to worry about anything. I had everything tuned.
So that's preparedness.
That's preparation. But I carried that out, motor racing out into flying racing aeroplanes, because, as I said again, you're traveling at over 500 kilometers an hour, and you're looking right, looking left, and you're trying to juggle all your propeller synchronizations and your all your fuel flows and everything, and you're trying to keep an eye out for different planes. So imagine the disadvantage in that when you can just dive to the bottom, everything's set up, and you just put the throttle full flat and just sit there and enjoy the ride and pick out the pylons as you go around them. And it's about a 13-kilometre course, but it doesn't take long to get 13 kilometres.
So that preparedness,
that preparation.
yeah.
That was one thing I carried from motor racing over to air racing. Preparation.
Over to your life as well. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I think, long hours, taking a risk. There's a lot of, the problem in the motor industry, it's very volatile. It's up, it's down.
Can someone make it their full-time career? I mean, in Australian motor racing, like, can Australian motor racing be a full-time career for someone?
The reason I went into cars is because I had this passion.
Yeah.
And if you love, and if there's one thing I can share with your listeners, and I say this to people, find out in life what you like. Don't worry about the money. Find out in life what you like, and then go and do it, because you spend over half your life working. And if you go to work and it's not work, everything is easy. It's all about the journey. It's a place of happiness.
Now let's come down to your other profession as a car sales person. In other words, you are a business owner and entrepreneur. There are lots of listeners probably listening to us right now, or will watch us later on, or are watching right now. As a car salesperson, right? And you've trained me too,
Yeah.
right? You trained me in sales here. Let's begin with that. I'm very, very, I was a really young rookie when I came to you, very young, new to the country, and you took me under your wing. What did you see in me? Like, I always wanted to ask this on you.
I saw this natural ability and this worth ethic to get ahead. And I knew that you'd chosen Australia, and I knew whatever you were going to do was going to be a success.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. No, it really was. And I tell the other story where, another funny story where I was working one day and a guy turned up, an Indian chap turned up, and he's now selling cars, and he's probably well known. But he said, look, I don't want any money. I just want to come here and sit and work, and I'm interested in cars and see what you do. Well, you're not going to believe this, but the 2 weeks he was with me, I had an all-time record. And the funny thing about it, I never told him it was a record. So he went off with these glazy eyes and everything, and he's now doing quite well in the
car
motor
sales
trade.
industry.
Yeah, and a nice guy.
But
And a nice guy.
I'll have to thank you as well.
You know,
for doing that, for a new guy that came into Australia, and you believing in me and letting me. First, I started as a car washer. I used to wash your cars. Then you let me sell the cars.
That's right.
And you taught me.
Well, you had natural ability, and you were kind, and you were nice. It's all about being kind, you know. It's all about, everyone's got a different attitude when they're selling. You know, you've got to be kind. And I maintain, I always say you always leave a little bit for the other guy, you know, and if you look after people, they'll come back. The reason I'm so successful, I've got all these people coming back after 50 years, and people remembering when I was 40 years in Braddon. I was the last dealer to leave Braddon.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, you had 2 yards there. Yeah,
I just got to a stage where I was getting tired. You know, I really was. I was getting tired, and it's the old story: what you put in is what you get out. I love Braddon, but I didn't like the parking inspectors.
I remember your problems with the parking inspectors all the time. Then, well. Now, if someone wants to come and buy a used car, I'll come around what a real salesperson should be, because there's a huge shortage of really great salespeople in Australia. I believe, because when I try and find good salespeople, I don't find salespeople, because no university can teach you sales.
No.
Right? It has to be natural, right? You can't go to a university or a college and say, hey, I've learned marketing and sales. No. It can't teach you that, right? But let's say when you actually, if somebody wants to go and buy a used car, even you go and buy used cars, right, to sell, what should a person look at when you buy a used car? What are the things, like, what are the top 5 things that you have to look into a used car?
Well, you've got to look at for value for money, but at the same time, you've got to be very careful. You know, one of the biggest problems we've got now is ex-hailed cars. You know, you've got to be very careful to pick the cars that haven't been hailed. The other thing you've got to be very careful about, and remember back a year, 2 years ago, and even now, you know, the huge rains they had in Sydney, they had them in Brisbane, all that. And you've got to be careful that the cars haven't been underwater. There's lots and lots of things you look at. So, you know, it's important to see the car's got a logbook and it's serviced and it's been treated right. You know, we try, you can't always do it, but we try and buy a car with a logbook that's been serviced. That's the big
What
thing.
else? Like, do you look for a leak in the engine or the tires?
Yeah, look. Even I get tricked after all these years. I even get tricked.
Seriously,
And
seriously.
it's. I tell you what, I'm still learning after 50 years. I can tell you.
Come on, Chris. Are you serious?
Yeah, I am. I'm still learning in 50 years all the new tricks they get up to.
Well, I had a family friend that took me to because they know that I used to work in used car sales, so they took me for a to inspect a used car somewhere in Canberra. This is recent. I called you about it as well. And I looked at the car. I thought it was sort of dodgy, but he was very desperate buying a car, so he said, I'm going to buy it even if it runs for 6 months. I'll get my value out of it. Well, what happened was he drove the car away. The second day, the engine blew.
Yeah.
I opened the hood. I looked into the engine. The engine was clean though.
Yeah.
But it blew up.
That's why it was clean. There's a reason.
Yeah.
There's a reason why dealers are a little bit more than private. So with a dealer, you do something wrong, you lose your license. When you buy privately, it's buyer beware. There's always a reason why they're cheaper. You don't get any warranty. You don't get any service.
So
and
buying
if there's something wrong, and down the line, if that car's been stolen, you lose all your money. But if you're a dealer and that car's stolen or it's been misrepresented, then you get your money back. The government, the actual Consumer Affairs will give you the money that you've lost.
100%.
100%. Especially if we're talking about if the dealer leaves the industry or becomes bankrupt and things like that. They're all the protections you've got.
So when you buy a used car, and a lot of people don't know about this, you get 3 months warranty. Is that correct? A 6 months warranty?
3 months. 3 months, 5,000 is a statutory warranty.
Yeah, so that's why you.
But it's got to be under 10 years old.
Okay.
But I've got to say that we give that even when the cars are over that.
Yeah, I've seen you do that.
But that comes back to the car's not going to blow up.
Yeah.
You just got to you know what's good, what's bad. You know where the car's been.
Yeah.
But it is Russian roulette sometimes. It's a very it's a dynamic industry to be in, but it can cause you some pain.
Yeah, I've seen that, and the family friend had to go through a legal battle.
You're really trying to do the right thing.
Yeah. So, so when you buy a used car, right? Not all used cars are bad, and not all used cars are good as well.
Yeah.
So you gotta be very careful.
You gotta be careful. You gotta know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a reason why some cars cost more than the others. Probably because it's got lower kilometres, it's got full logbooks and things like that. But I noticed, you talk about different cultures and things.
Yeah.
And some people think, oh, I've got that car. It's so much cheaper.
Yeah.
They don't see the dent in the door. When they come from the Asian countries and everything, they don't see the dent. They don't see they're not worried about the paint.
Yeah.
And things like that.
Yeah. But
as long as the car runs good.
Yeah.
They're more interested in the monetary side of things. How much.
That's the multicultural side of yeah. What? Now, we have 5 more minutes to go, but I have so much to talk to you about.
Yeah.
What do you think of, the multicultural side in Canberra? You've been in Canberra over 50 years now, right?
Yeah.
And you've seen Canberra grow. Yeah. And you've seen a lot of multicultural people coming in, right? What do you think of that? I mean,
I think it's a good thing. One thing that impresses me is that the new people coming into Australia, they want to work. They've come from a country where they have nothing, they've got nothing, and they see us and they know if they work hard, they can have, and it's going back to what I talked about. You can have anything you want in life. You can have the best house in the street as long as you're prepared to work. And to be honest, the average Australian guy is very lazy, honestly. I get shot for saying that, but it's true. A lot of the guys, and the other thing I like about the melting of cultures, I came out of a place called Griffith.
Yeah.
Right. and it had a lot of Italians back then. It wasn't the Indians, it wasn't the Asians, it was the Italians that come to work in
and the Greeks as well,
and
probably.
the Greeks
Yeah.
that all came to work in the fields and in the farms and everything. And I look back now and I see things like the friendship I've got with guys that were Italians that couldn't even speak when they came to school, and the relationship we've got today is never forgotten. It's the most wonderful feeling to go back home and meet up with your true friends, and they came from poverty, and they've all done well and they've all got big farms. But the nice thing about it, and my brothers all married Italian girls and things like that, and my sister's married,
So it's
it's a real melting pot.
So what are you trying to say?
And what I'm trying to say is, you guys that are Indians and Asians and
Yeah.
you're trying to change your kids in 10, 20 years,
don't change them. Yeah.
they're going to run the world. They're not going to be worried. It's not a terrible thing to say.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, I've seen it from life experience.
Yeah.
How everyone melts in.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Really, it's fantastic.
Now-
But I've got to say this: I love the way things like the Indians, they'll get a group of guys and they'll all invest their money and they'll buy one a house and they don't have to worry about paying the interest. And then the next lot will buy a house. And that's so clever. Us Aussie guys, we were never that clever. You know what I mean? We never had that. Even though we had good friends, we never had that bond.
Yeah.
We never had that bond. No one ever taught us to be like that. And I think
That's something to take away from the multicultural.
That's something to take away from multicultural. And I see all the service stations. Every time you walk into a service station now, it's run by Indians,
Yeah.
and they're just so clever. They're so clever.
Right. No, that's a great perspective.
But in 10 or 20 years, they will all melted in. They'd married Australians, they'd married Greeks, they'd married everything. We are so lucky in this country. I don't see the race problem, racism. I don't.
No.
I don't.
Well, I feel it sometimes subtly, but not as much as probably my friends do in the US.
Yeah.
That way we're very lucky, right?
We call it Australia the lucky country.
Yeah, it is.
And there's never been a truer word. If you want, doesn't matter what nationality, if you want to get ahead, you can get ahead. It's so easy.
Just work hard.
All you've got to do is work hard.
That's right.
Work hard. There's no tricks. What you put in is what you get out.
We've got 3 more minutes to go.
Right.
I have so much to talk to you about. But you've been a great entrepreneur, a great business person, right? I wanted to talk to you about your personal life, but we can do that later on in some other episode. But I wanted to talk to you about becoming a great business person. Very short. What does it take and what do you need to do to become a really good business person? Because there's a whole wimp of things going around in the new generation. Everyone wants to become an entrepreneur, right? A business person. What do you think?
Start at the bottom. Start at the bottom and look at your product and what you want, and then work hard and work long and work weekends. Do more than the other guy's doing and you'll always get ahead. There's no tricks. Just put in more and do more than the other guy's doing. And it's all about work.
Work hard, and that's how you become
work hard and work smart.
Work smart, right?
Yeah.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for coming in today. I that 1 hour that just passed.
Is it 1 hour really?
Yeah.
That quick?
That was the best 1 hour of my life.
Really?
I got to tell you that.
We didn't even get halfway through.
No, there's so many things that we need to talk about.
I can remember when I first met you. Your name was Samanchu, and I used to. And in Australia, we call you by
by whatever name,
by a nickname. And I used to call you Samanchu because
yeah.
I could always remember Samanchu, not Samanchu.
Yeah,
and we've always kept this friendship, haven't we?
And, no, thank you so much.
And it's healthy, and it's fantastic.
No, I respect you for who you are. That's what it is.
In terms of racism, it's not alive and well here.
No,
honestly,
no, it's not.
And the Australian way is to help people. We're really, people coming to this country are really lucky,
right?
Because most of us Aussies want to help them.
That's right.
It's a kind. It's a kind place to come.
Anyways, thank you so much, Chris, for
that's all
coming in. It's 6 o'clock. CMS 91.1. Hello, Canberra. Keep listening to us. Keep watching us. We are live as well. I'll meet you next week, Friday, 5 to 6. Don't forget to tune in. Hello, Canberra.